Hello there, my name is Andrew and I like to talk about headphones. Today we're talking about the Sonos Ace wireless noise cancelling headphones. Sonos is of course a more mainstream brand known for their soundbars and Bluetooth speakers, and now they've got a headphone, the Ace. And I've spent time listening to it, I've measured it, I've put it through all kinds of various different tests, and I have some thoughts on it. Let's go. Alright, as usual, a quick disclaimer, this unit was provided on loan for this review. I do not get to keep it, I've not been paid to say anything in particular about it, and all thoughts and opinions here are my own. So, the Sonos Ace. It's a headphone that makes me do this face. Okay, to be fair, many headphones make me do this, or maybe this is just how I naturally look, and I'm faking it the rest of the time. You never know. But basically, this is a headphone that many of us picky audio people, those with the brain affliction, were hoping would be good. My friends and I thought, this could be a solid new recommendation for ANC headphones, since that is a category that is sorely underserved when it comes to sound quality. And if anybody could do it, Sonos could do it. They didn't, but we'll get to that. But this is especially important because leaders like Apple and Sony focus more on features and style over acoustic qualities. Unfortunately, the Sonos Ace can be put in that same category, and you'll see why shortly. But that's not to say that it doesn't have strong points, which we'll also talk about. But first, let's quickly go over what this is, what you get here. So naturally, this is a wireless ANC headphone. They advertise lossless audio, more on that later. You also get spatial audio and head tracking. They advertise rapid charging with 30 hours of battery, so that's not bad. And then of course you have some functionality within their app and the ability to switch with other Sonos devices. I am not able to test that because I don't have the other Sonos devices. You also get this really nice carry case and you get some cables. Now, when it comes to the build and the design, I feel they did a good job with this headphone. This is actually my favorite part about this headphone. It feels sturdy, well built. You've got the metal rods here for the arms. It's kind of like a more premium feeling Bose 700, if anybody remembers that headphone. It's got sort of a similar style of cushiony under headband piece, but this feels more robust somehow. Not quite as intense as the Airpods Max, but it's solid. I like the build quality. And it also looks really good. It looks sleek and classy. I was going to say this looks like AirPods Max at home, but I actually think the Sonos Ace looks better than the AirPods Max. It's sort of a simple, no-nonsense kind of thing, and I like that. For the mechanical design, you get full cup swivel here, and the arms extend, just like this. But I do have some gripes when it comes to the mechanical design here. So the pad opening, it's just too small for my ears. Not only does it clamp onto my earlobes at the bottom, it also mildly crumples the back side of the pinna, so this part of the ear. If you have smaller ears, this is not going to be a problem for you, but if you have ears like mine, this is definitely an issue and it does become noticeable over time. That's not to say that the comfort of this headphone is bad. It's actually pretty good. It's better than that of the AirPods Max, I find, because it is lighter. So overall, for its long-term wearability, I find I have an easier time with this one than I did with the AirPods Max. Just take note that if you have bigger ears, it might be a little bit annoying to wear. Now, let's go into the important stuff here, the sound quality. And for those who are new to this channel, we test this by using industry standard measurement equipment in the form of the Gross 43AG and the newer B&K 5128 to give us a sense of the performance. These rigs should be thought of as different heads, since the headphone's performance can vary depending on the head that wears it, and depending on the headphone. That's a whole other topic. But say you have a bigger head, the clamp force might be different, so the pad deformation might be different, which is going to change how the headphone sits and then the response of the eardrum. So this is what I'm talking about and why it's actually useful to measure on different rigs. But regardless, what we're talking about here for objective performance, this is frequency response. And all of this was tested with aptX, so this is the lossless use condition. It should be noted that lossless with Bluetooth is not available with iOS devices, but I use Android, so that's not a problem for me. So here are the B&K 5128 measurements. You're seeing both the raw and the calibrated results. Again, if you're new to reading this, I'll leave links in the description that can help. But in short, there are many ways for things to sound bad, very few ways for things to sound good, and when they do, the response typically falls somewhere within this range. This is the range of listener preferences that have been pulled from the preference research. That's the shaded area here. And I think some folks might be expecting sound demos with a device like this. This is a general problem with YouTube reviews. And it's that you can't control for the playback equipment, and this always compounds the sound. There are ways it can be improved, but that's again a topic for another time. So let's go through the Sonos Ace. It has a slightly bass boosted presentation with relaxed ear gain and then some lower treble spiciness, as you can see here. Interesting to note is that the bass For the bass, there does seem to be some sort of leakage compensation. And to test this, I switched the headphone to passive mode in the app, which you can do. I positioned it on the rig such that it showed a notable bass droop, so there was a meaningful break in the seal. And then I turned it back to active mode to see if the bass would compensate. And sure enough, the bass presence was brought back to roughly the same spot it was when I had it with a full seal on the rig. So there is something going on here when it comes to leakage compensation. I would just say that if you want to take advantage of that for the best and most consistent sound, you want to keep it in either ANC or ambient mode. Don't bother turning it off. And this is going to make it more accommodating of people who wear glasses, for example, and there's a break in the seal. So that's a good thing. But with that said, the bass presence is a bit on the bulbous side, having some excess presence in the mid and upper bass. It's not unreasonable, though, for these types of headphones. Now, unfortunately, the mids are a bit of a roller coaster ride. Perceptually, it's not that bad, but there's also quite a bit of low frequency masking that occurs as a result of the elevated mid and upper bass. So I'd say the mids for this, they're mid at best. That's right, mid-mids. Shocking, I know. But it's the treble where I feel they really whiffed it on this one. So you have relaxed ear gain between 3 and 5 kilohertz. Which can lead to a bit of a muffled presentation overall. But then you have this lower treble peak, which is really weird on this headphone. But let's now also take a look at how this measures on the Gross to see if it changes with a different head. And it does a bit. So here it is relative to ye old Harman 2018, which is the over-ear target that we all know and love. And I was surprised by this, but the lower treble peak, it is considerably worse on this head. So that's just something interesting to note. Maybe for different heads it would be less bothersome, but on both of these it shows a peak there and then it's worse on the Gross. In general, I don't have as high expectations for headphones like these as I do with passive headphones, because with these ones and similar types of headphones, there's all kinds of concessions required when it comes to implementing, you know, the ANC and all the electronics and all the various different features. So for that reason, I can forgive the uneven mids or the excess mid bass, some of these quirks that you see there. It's really not that big of an issue for me with these types of headphones. The problem is really with the treble, where I feel either one of two things occurred. Either they have their own particular targets or research data that indicates that this response is acceptable, in which case I would love to see it, or they had to make certain compromises due to the implementation of some of the rest of the features, like I mentioned, the way that they wanted with these headphones. And speaking of which, it's nice to be able to put lossless audio on the box. But you know what actually matters for the overall experience? Having a good and balanced frequency response. Focus on that first. And unfortunately, the app that you get with this is also quite limited when it comes to EQ adjustments. There are 2 filters you can use here, as well as a balance adjustment, but you can't fix the problem areas with this headphone, not really at all. Now, this issue is not unique to Sonos. I say this about every ANC headphone that I review. The lack of thorough EQ personalization options is basically foregoing one of the major benefits and advantages to active ANC wireless headphones. It's like buying a 4K TV and only watching 720p content. It's like, yeah, okay, it's fine for that, but you can do so much more. Now, let's talk about how it sounds subjectively with music. And remember that this is just my description of the experience, not a description of acoustic properties. So I find the various frequency response issues to be audible with this headphone in a number of ways. Now, this might just be me, but I find that when there's an emphasis to lower harmonics in music, it creates this kind of masking or blunting of the details. And so when you have features like what you get with that lower treble boost here over the resonant harmonics above it, it tends to obscure the way things are supposed to kind of ring out. So it obscures clarity for treble. And I've called this percussion compression in the past because I tend to notice this most on percussive hits, cymbal hits, that kind of thing. But in this case, I also noticed it with, sibilant tones for vocals as well. Like, it's not just that they're pronounced, it's that there's a kind of fuzziness to these tones that just doesn't sound quite right. And the thing is, it's not there all the time, so how bothersome these features are can depend a bit on the recording. But I found myself regularly feeling like, for my music, for my test tracks, there's more to the experience. And I know these test tracks very well. I listened to them for every review, and it felt like occasionally things were just coming through not clearly enough, or worse, things would sound harsh and fatiguing with this headphone. So that's one thing. But then I was thinking again, I do not have that same frame of reference for Atmos or immersive audio, so I tried that. And this experience with Atmos and spatial audio, it's very good. It's considerably better, but only because spatial audio is a cool experience, or like the Atmos mixes are cool mixes. So for example, I was listening to Steven Wilson's Staircase from the Harmony Codex album, which was mixed specifically for spatial audio. I actually went to a talk by Steven Wilson recently on this topic. It's a fantastic mix, and it's a really cool experience, even with these headphones, but it wasn't like the issues that I heard with stereo recordings weren't also there with spatial mixes. So that sort of blunted and compressed sound for the percussive hits, it's still there. You know, as a failed drummer, that matters to me. So that's basically the objective performance and how it sounds to me. But for some comparisons, while I'm not a fan of the sound on the Sonos Ace, there are actually a number of ANC headphones the Ace is better than. So it is meaningfully better sounding than the B&W PX8. And I'd also say that for its overall wideband balance, things are better here than on the Sony WH-1000 XM4. Not necessarily the 5, but the 4 was pretty weird in its default configuration. Compared to the AirPods Max, which I also wasn't a big fan of, these sound worse. Like, I'll just put it bluntly, these are worse. So in what ways is this worse? Well, the bass is better on the Max. The mids on the Max are also bad, but the treble is definitely better on the Max by a considerable margin. And again, I say this as someone who doesn't really like the AirPods Max that much. It's totally lacking in ear gain, which causes it to lack clarity, but at least it doesn't have a lower treble scimitar flaying my eardrums every once in a while. So it's just sadness all around with this one. What a delightful video this is. But actually, all is not lost. The Sonos Ace does have very good noise cancellation. Like, I was immediately impressed with its ANC capability. Now, at the moment, I'm in the process of overhauling my ANC test setup, so I don't have data for you on this one, but I would anecdotally put the ANC quality here up there with the better ones. So that would be, you know, including like the AirPods Max, the Sony, and the Bose. In the past, when I've done ANC measurements, I found that often it wasn't as straightforward as just one headphone canceling more noise, but rather the regions where the ANC was the strongest were different. And whatever they've done with this one, it's very effective when walking around outside in the city. But that leads me to my conclusion, and it's basically the same sad story for the vast majority of mainstream ANC headphones. It's style over substance. It's features over sound quality. Yes, it's got good ANC performance. Yes, it has the spatial audio stuff. Yes, it looks good and it's reasonably comfortable. And if that's all that matters to you, thumbs up from me. Sure, absolutely. But if you care about sound quality, this ain't it. Like, the lossless audio spec doesn't override the weird tonality quirks this headphone has, and ultimately that's the problem. I'd like to see them come out with a V2 or maybe possibly a firmware update that adjusts the DSP to create a more balanced response. I've seen other headphones do that based on feedback. Maybe Sonos can too. But that does it for this video. If you found any of this useful and you want to see more of my smiling face, consider subscribing to experience all of this joy on a regular basis. Imagine that. As usual, you'll be able to find all the measurements in the forum thread linked in the description. You can check out our written reviews and deep dive articles up on headphones.com. And you can chat with me and other like-minded audio folks in our Discord, also linked below. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.